Welcome to Community Forum. My name is John Guglielmino. I'm your host. We're going to be talking about a variety of things, but mainly the subject of divorce and how we can ease the situation for people through the proper coaching. That's a little bit of a change for the show, but there's the financial aspects of it. So we have the legal aspects, the financial aspects, and the coaching that's needed in the process to ease the process. With me is Robert Opotzner. Opotzner, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I knew I was going to do it.
That's okay.
You're with Collins and
Hannafin.
And Michelle Blanchard, who's a CFP at the end. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then Laura Earhart, you're a PhD. And
I'm with Psychotherapy Associates.
okay. All right, very good. So welcome to the show. Before we get started, because I am not good at reading, public reading, especially when I'm on camera like this, could you give us a little bit of a background as to how you got in your current position?
Sure.
You know, your educational background,
Sure.
as much as you'd like in a couple minutes.
I'm from Shelton, Connecticut, so I went to Shelton High School class of 1971, graduated of Yale College in 1975, and Duke Law School in 1978. I've been practicing law in Connecticut for the past 37 years, and been with Collins Hannafin as a partner since 1990. It's been 26 years now.
Wow, time flies when you're having fun.
Sure does. And I'm only 28 years old.
Well,
Give or take.
Give or take. Go ahead, Laura.
I'm a marriage and family therapist. Been practicing in Connecticut for 32 years. I have a PhD in natural health. And I also have another business in which I provide supervised visitation for families that need a third party to be present when children are visiting with their parents, and obviously see a lot of families and children under the duress of divorce.
A very trying situation. And Michelle, last but not least, Michelle Blanchard, CFP.
Yes, I am a partner with Prosperity Financial Group in Danbury, Connecticut. I have been practicing financial planning for 20 years.
Wow.
in New York State and mainly in Danbury, Connecticut.
Okay. Starting with yourself, Robert, or Bob.
Either way.
Okay. What do you find what differentiates yourself from another law practice? And you have somebody that comes in and they're getting a divorce. Are you the person that gathers the team, so to speak, to make it a less stressful and long-term situation? Because as we discussed when we were in the green room, you indicated that there's a long term to the situation. It's not just that month or 3 months or 6 months, but it's the rest of their lives that there's got to be some, so you try to ease the process.
Sure. I'm a litigator by trade. I've been practicing litigation for most of my entire career. I've been doing divorce law for many, many, many years. And I believe that the litigation process that we now have in divorce cases is not working. It's not working because it's hard on the people. The court system, right now there's a lot of budget funding problems going on, and who knows what's going to happen in budget crisis. Well, when that happens, there are fewer personnel in the court system to make the process run smoothly. So we've been developing through the collaborative divorce process of Western Connecticut and other similar groups in the state of Connecticut to try to have a less adversarial methodology for divorce practice, and that's what we're trying to work on. I still try my case if I need to try cases, although only about 5 to 10% of all cases literally go to trial. But there are other ways that I think make it more efficient for people to get a divorce, and one is through the collaborative process, which essentially the goal is to do it in a happier, friendlier way. You still want to advocate for your clients, but you have to remember that when the divorce case is done and there are children involved, once we're done the divorce, it's done, but the people have to live on and on and on. If they don't do it in a cooperative, collaborative fashion, the children may be harmed. And we think this is a better way to go to get the divorce process. And we'll discuss how that works as we go on the show.
Okay, very good. Yeah, you got to remember, mom and dad may be splitting up, but the kids, they're still mom and dad, and there's going to be, if it's too traumatic, they're going to be favoring one versus the other, and there's like a lot of psychological damage that can go there.
We spend a fair amount of time with the therapist and with the lawyers involved especially in talking about how do we tell the children that mommy and daddy are getting a divorce. And that's something that we deal with a lot, and sometimes in difficult cases especially, I'll call the therapist in and say, hey, how do we talk to the children so they understand mommy and daddy are getting divorced, but the children are not? Am I right, Laura?
Correct.
Okay.
Parents are often stumped by what is the best way to handle that kind of situation, and every family is different. So in the capacity of a divorce coach, which is what I act as, and a child specialist in the collaborative, my job is really to work for the parents and in a way for the family and for the whole process, because being able to help people help their children through a difficult time only makes the process easier on the parents and the children. Neither one of them has to really get so distressed that it shows up in the children. And if parents become very distressed as a result of the divorce, or stressed, I guess is what you would call it, the children do feel it. And it comes out in many ways.
Mom and dad are fighting over something like the golf clubs or the car or who gets the house, the vacation home or whatever. There's too much of that. It's like, what about us? You know, whether the kids are going to think you care more about stuff than you care about us, and what does that mean in the long run? You know, the fighting and breaking up the family assets is going to have an adverse effect in the long term, right?
Well, if there were, because there were probably some difficulties in the marriage to start with, they get magnified in the divorce process. And the collaborative way attempts to really minimize those and keep them under control and help the parties with whatever they need in the way of understanding what their children are going through, how to handle situations that they weren't faced with before. We don't really, in our society, we really don't even have a really good language for divorce, for in-laws and ex-laws and whatever you want to say. I mean, in a lot of ways, this is still a fairly new being in our society.
When you consider in 1959, it still was a whispered thing in a New England town.
Right.
Oh, they're getting divorced. That kind of thing.
Right.
And so it is relatively new, this idea that why don't you try to work? You're still a family. There's still a mother and a father here to those kids. Let's try to be, as you say, more humane.
You're still going to be a family, even though you get divorced.
In the 1970s, we changed our statutes, the legislature did, to go to what they call no-fault divorce. In the olden days, you had to show some particular reason.
There had to be a reason.
There'd
Somebody
be a
was
reason.
at fault.
Right. Now, fault, you don't need to have fault to get a divorce, although fault can be involved in the determination of different issues. Perhaps we're a bit confusing because we haven't discussed how collaborative is different than the traditional model. Would that be helpful to you if we did that?
Okay, I was just trying to get a little bit input.
Okay, sure.
And how do you work on, in your case?
In the collaborative process, my role is to act as a neutral financial analyst to help gather, coordinate the financial information, the income, the expenses, so that both parties really have a good understanding of the current financial situation. And then as we go through different scenarios as part of the settlement process, to really help them understand post-divorce what their situation is going to be, what the financial consequences are going to be, and the tax ramifications of separating the assets for each party.
Yeah, so whether it's $200,000 of assets or whatever that may be, you're going to say, well, this is going to be approximately half, and this is the consequences of maybe being in lesser investments.
Right, so that they really understand the financial ramifications of their situation.
Okay, so now everybody's had a chance to come back to, and we can get into the Before, you used to try to prove fault.
Well, I'm not that old, so it was before my time. But the
Okay.
olden days, you had to try to prove fault. You don't need
Well,
fault.
I used to read the paper, I guess. That's where I started. And then there was the Perry Mason stuff on TV. You know, they used to have the law shows on
That's
there.
right.
L.A. Law. I don't think that went that far back, but you know, it was in the late 70s.
But we don't have any more of Paul Drake running with that last piece of evidence. We now have requirements to share information, so you don't have Paul Drake that last
That's right.
comment saying, "Here, I'm going to save the day."
Yeah. So the difference between what was adverse or just a straight no fault, now you're really trying to maybe give counselors to both parties and also the kids if they need it.
In Connecticut, in order to get divorced, if you meet the Connecticut jurisdictional requirements, a lawsuit must be filed to start the dissolution of marriage action. The traditional model would be that two lawyers are involved, representing each side, and you would have certain hearings and motions perhaps, and ways to approach trying to resolve the case. You still have to start the divorce in court and end it in divorce. What the collaborative process does is it tries to pull as much as possible, in fact totally out of the court process after you file for the divorce until you make the divorce judgment. And in the collaborative process, each party has a lawyer, and then in the process we try to share information while still advocating for our client, but talking about the various issues. And then as we need, sometimes from right away, we'll have a coach come in therapy depending upon the issues. It's better if you have someone from day one. And in terms of parenting issues, that might be helpful. There's also a need for a financial planner to help decide, for example, on alimony, which has tax implications. Maybe if someone pays more alimony, the overall family unit has a better impact, and Uncle Sam doesn't get the money, the kids and the parties do, and that's where Michelle, as a financial planner, would come in. The whole goal to be in a more efficient approach to try to get a marriage dissolved in a more friendly way if possible, and it's more cost efficient typically. That's it in a nutshell, I think.
Okay, now is there a website for the collaborative? I assume somebody knows the website.
Yes, the website is www.danburydivorcesolutions.com.
And is there an office, or it's pretty much independent practitioners?
It will bring you to the website, and there is a link to the attorneys, the divorce coaches, and to the financial planner.
How many people are involved in a rough idea? Do you have an idea?
About a dozen. About a dozen
Yes.
in Danbury. We are not, by the way, all together. These are lawyers from different law firms. One of my
Right.
partners happens to be part of this group, but it's some lawyers, it's some therapists, and it's some financial planners who are trying to do this kind of thing. And it's not just in Danbury. I belong to a group in Darien, and there's other groups across the state trying to help people get a resolution that's more efficient, and that's the process, and hopefully walk away shaking hands as opposed to showing fists.
Right, and being able to, whether it's on a week-to-week or a month-to-month, actually talk to somebody as opposed to, I got to go upstairs. He's coming any minute now. Don't tell me when he comes, and don't talk about me.
At the very first meeting in a collaborative case, the
Yeah.
two lawyers and two parties will discuss their goals and objectives. And what we try to do as the lawyers who are like the symphony conductor, we try to have people express their goals and understand what they're trying to accomplish. So someone might say, for example, I want sole custody. That's my goal. Well, wait a minute. We might ask questions as to what do you think sole custody means and why do you want it? And once you break it down as to what they're trying to achieve, there's an ability to get to yes, that famous book from many years ago. If you can understand why you want what you want, there's a better way to create a plan that achieves best for the family unit. That's what the goal is. And it's not easy. We're trained. I've taken many hours of seminars in the collaborative process to try to become better at getting to quote yes, unquote. Sometimes we have to step in and make sure the parties are respectful, which is always very, very important. And we have some rules and guidelines. We have a signed agreement that the parties agree to as part of the process, all with the intention of dealing with the inevitable You know, not like the court case you see in the fights on TV and LA Law and all those different places, but rather to try to do it in
Or the afternoon shows. Yeah.
That's right.
Judge
Judge Judy.
General Hospital.
You know, it's so unreal, but that's what most people see, and that's what they think. You know, but are there any examples that you can give on the counseling you've done without obviously without mentioning names?
You know, the divorce coach, child specialist job is really the project manager of the whole system in a sense. Our job is really to be present in all the meetings and to help the process move along. And as Bob said, it does break down sometimes, and people do start getting disrespectful. You know, it would be my job as the divorce coach in that situation to try to neutralize things, maybe take a break, talk quietly with one of the parties that was very distressed and try to bring them back to the table so that we could solve those kinds of problems. So it's like having your own personal therapist there. But I'm not necessarily doing therapy. I'm really trying to coach them on how to go through this process, facilitate the process.
Another thing for people out there that might be a little more traditional or whatever, that may have the thought, are there really that many people that are angry in the process? Or
Yes.
there really, it's like,
Yes.
Is it like 2/3 that are angry?
Well, I wouldn't know what to put a number on it because obviously in therapy practice actually see quite a few angry people. And if you're doing litigation, you probably see more angry people. Collaborative, the people may have anger, but they seem to be willing to work together for the benefit of their family long term. I mean,
especially when you bring the kids.
Well, they don't bring the kids. If there's little children, then it's very worthwhile for them to work collaboratively because they're going to be a long time. They're going to be parents to children. But think about it. I mean, people are going to go to graduations. They're going to go to weddings.
Especially when you're the
Family-
overall
families-
family.
yeah,
This is grandma. This
right.
is
Right.
uncle.
We don't want to have want to have grudges.
I had one case that was not collaborative in which in the middle of the divorce process, one of the children graduated from college. And I got a phone call that Saturday morning of graduation fighting about tickets. And if you had a collaborative process, it might not have happened that way. People don't typically call and say, hey, Bob, I want to do a collaborative divorce. What typically happens is I get phone calls from clients or potential clients who want to talk about their issues, and I'll say, let's have a consultation. And that consultation, which lasts about an hour to hour and 15 minutes, it's a paid consultation. I hand out some statutes and other materials, and I ask a lot of questions. And in that process, as I ask the questions, I try to understand whether this is a case for which collaborative might be an appropriate situation. And if it is, in most cases could be, then we start talking about, well, what is collaborative law? What is the difference, like we did see before? And then people begin the process of saying, well, gee, I'd like that approach maybe is better than the traditional. And then that's how these folks also get involved if the clients choose to do so. And that's the way it works. But it's a good process. If you ever go to short calendar, which is when you have your typical weekly motions on a Monday, today was Monday, the courthouse on the second floor in the Danbury Courthouse, the judges do the best they can do, it's jammed. I know one lawyer sat for 6 hours and the client had to pay for 6 hours of time and the lawyer sitting there waiting to get heard. When if they had collaborative, they might have had a way to spend that 6 hours in a much more effective way to get to a resolution. And I sometimes tell my clients, if you're not sure whether you want collaborative or not, go to court on a Monday morning and see what you think it's like. And I say you can sit in the courtroom and people do that. And it sometimes helps people decide, you know what, I'd like to try the better approach.
Now, when it comes to the finances, after these two get done, I would think your job's a little easier, or are they still combative when they get to, okay, this is the way you should structure your, in other words, when it gets to what you do
Right.
with the family,
Right.
they indicate, okay, this goes to you, but this goes to you, and this should be for the benefit of the kids, you know, college fund or what have you.
Right. Well, I help them go through that process. So hopefully in going through the numbers and the calculations and the tax ramifications together, both parties will come to a better understanding of the situation and see it in black and white, if you will. So, and if we do see some animosity or some anger issues, then
Then you
of
go back
course
to the
we would
counselor.
bring Laura or one of the other divorce coaches
And
in.
the nice part of it is Michelle's work sort of levels the playing field, because the two divorcing parties see the numbers at the same time.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's like half.
right on the
Now it's
table,
half of
very
what they had.
transparent.
You know,
Right.
nobody's gaining anything.
right. So nobody's hiding anything. And,
Exactly.
You know, no one has one position or another position.
Right.
And Michelle has these nice charts she makes, and she'll list the assets of the parties and whose name they're in, et cetera. And then there's other charts showing how do we divide these up differently. And what's the impact? There's a lot of different tax impacts, and she can, in her presentation, when she's involved in the cases, can show this is how it works and this is how it works. And then someone might understand that if you pay more, you might get more, for example, in the alimony spectrum. And that's the kind of charts
Right.
that she does. But I do want to say one thing. Every divorce client is not angry. There are people who come in who aren't
That's
that
true.
way.
Right.
And I don't want to
Well, that's why I was trying to say 2/3 is a
Well,
70%
I
and
don't know what the
30% that are
percentage
not.
would be.
Well, all my clients are angels, of course. No, I would say to you that there's the thing that bothers people the most is that the other side knows how to push a button of that person, and so they know what the thing is that's most important to that person. And it's our job to help people get to the end game, so to speak, without pushing the buttons as much as possible. And sometimes we'll, in a collaborative or any kind of process, we'll say to our clients, if we're having a meeting, for example, with the other attorney and the other party, let's take a break for a minute and let's go take a walk outside or whatever to make sure that people are keeping their eye on the ball. We also have, and you do this a lot, Laura, a picture of the children on the table. And you might talk about why we sometimes will say, here,
When you're doing
let's
the
talk
interview.
about Johnny. Here's your
Yeah.
picture of Johnny. Boy, that kid's a good baseball player. And that's where
Right.
it dovetails to you.
Well, it brings it
Back in the
reality.
perspective.
It brings it
Focus.
back to the children, and really what's important in this process.
What came out of that marriage is going to last another 40, 50,
Right.
60 years beyond the parents' lifetime.
And
is those
into
kids.
into the next generation,
Right.
and what that child or children think about marriage, and how they raise their children.
So that changes things a little bit.
It
Now,
should.
in the green room, we were talking again, and it wasn't a long exchange, but I absorbed things, and that there's an angle that if you do this type of arrangement, it actually might be less expensive, the entire process, and it eases things. Could you explain
Yes.
that a little more? That
Yes.
it might be less expensive to do this approach.
Yes. Well, first of all, we believe that the collaborative divorce process, you can't put a specific number on it, but I think it's about 20% or more less expensive, more cost efficient. Now, why would that be? Well, think about it for a second. In a traditional adversarial case, if I choose to have a financial planner with me, the other side might also. So they're both sides are paying
Right.
for a financial planner. If you have one financial planner, then you're saving that particular cost. If you can avoid the court process and resolve an issue, then you don't spend 6 hours waiting for a judge to have a case heard. That's 6 hours for me to be paid and 6 hours for opposing counsel to be paid. So if you do those kinds of things, you can hopefully be more efficient in the process. Not all collaborative cases, however, work out to be a resolution. And at some point in time, there are cases in which the lawyers might say to the people, do you think this is working well? And sometimes it breaks apart, but if the lawyers are doing their job, and if the parties are listening with an open mind, then I think there's a good chance that you're going to save money doing it and get a better result. You agree with that, folks?
Oh,
Definitely.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Okay. Once again, the website. Before we get away, I wanted to get it up a couple of
Sure.
times.
www.danburydivorcesolutions.com. Thank you.
We got 3 or 4 minutes
Yes.
left. So, any thoughts for the last couple of minutes that we have?
Yeah, I just have a couple of thoughts, and that is we as lawyers are empathetic to what our clients are going through. And there are times that even if I'm not in a collaborative case and one party is a therapist, I'll meet with that therapist and the client to try to help that person reach the end of the day in a positive way. So if you can have one thought from tonight's meeting, it's that we'd like to try to help people resolve their divorce cases without having the stress and strain so that when the case is done, it will work out well. I once had a case where the husband was forced to pay for the kids to go to Italy. And he complained and complained, and my client was thrilled that he paid for it. Years later, the child said, gee, Dad did that for me, and the father heard it and was very pleased. So that's our goal, resolution in a nice way if possible.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's really important that people use the divorce process to model really to themselves and to their children that they can solve problems productively.
Right.
Any closing thoughts, Maria?
My goal from a financial standpoint is to make both parties, with the collaborative process, make both parties aware of the settlement that they are agreeing to. So at the end of the day, it's the best case scenario given the situation for each party financially.
Okay.
This is a decision that they make for themselves,
Right.
not a judge.
Which is, you've got no disrespecting the judges, but sometimes the judges can make things.
Well, the judges don't know you,
Yeah,
so they do the best that they can.
yeah.
The judge might see someone for an hour or two or a day or two, and it's people's lives. You could have a 25-year marriage and a lot of money or not so much money, but you have kids to deal with. In the collaborative process, we're spending hours together. It's something that we can do as a better situation, and that's the goal, a better divorce for people.
Okay, we still got another minute or so. Let's go to the website again, and maybe your information if there's any questions.
Yes, on our website, there is a list of a lot of information.
Oh, that's all on the website, that's
Yes,
right.
there's
Yeah.
a great deal of
Yes.
information on the website. We should have biographies on the website, and you can get information. You can also call me, or call Laura, or call Michelle, and we'll be glad to direct you to the appropriate spot for yourself.
But everybody's on the website, this
Yes.
Yes.
collaborative.
Everybody in
And-
this
And
group
you've
is
got
on
like
the
about
website.
12 people roughly
Yes.
at
Yes.
this point in time.
Yes.
Right.
Are you expanding that, or are you all of the different towns?
We're not limiting to who's involved, but we want to make sure people are properly trained. And this is the greater Danbury area, so we have people from New Milford to Richfield. I'm Richfield.
To Danbury,
Now they're
yes.
waving at me, so that means it's time to go. I want to thank you for coming
you,
on the
sir.
show. And I want to thank you all for coming on the show. I want to thank the viewers for tuning in the Community Forum. Tune in next week, same time, same station, and we'll have another interesting program. Good night for now, and we'll see you then.